Today's game is one that I always saw advertised but never actually saw it in the stores. It was like no one ever carried it. And I didn't get to play it until a PC re-release in 2000. So, today's game is Rayman on the Sony Playstation.
Before I get into the review, there's several versions of Rayman. There's a PC, Saturn, PlayStation, and Atari Jaguar. There's also Rayman Gold, Rayman Forever, Rayman Collector, Rayman Advance. It's a PlayStation Network and DSiWare download, and there's even a Game Boy Color version. This game was everywhere and on practically everything at the time. There's some controversy over release dates though. Some sources say that the Atari Jaguar, which is cited as the original game, and PC versions were released first, and 2 months later is when the PlayStation game was released. This does sound accurate, as the Jaguar was released about a year or two before the PlayStation and Saturn. Others say that the PlayStation version was released first and the Atari Jaguar was released a week later. The PlayStation version was released September 1st, 1995, while the console itself was released September 9th, 1995. That doesn't make sense. Why would they release a game 8 days before the release of a console it's going to be on?
Yeah, you can make the argument that some games are released before the console, but I've only seen that one other time, and that was with the Nintendo Wii, and the games that were sold the day before the console, and they were non-Nintendo games. And this wasn't like they were released 8 days prior, like Rayman. But I've given you both sides of the story, so you can make your decision from there. And Rayman is actually one of those games that I'm kind of afraid to touch, because, there's going to be someone out there where if you say something negative about a game that they like, then suddenly you're biased against it. But, back to the review.
Anyway, Rayman came out at the perfect time. It was at that juncture of leaving the 16-bit age and entering the 32-bit era, easing players from cartridges to a disc-based format. Because most games were 2D platformers at the time, it was good for developers to stick to what they knew as a way to get used to programming for new consoles.
Although that's really just my opinion, but it does seem kind of logical.
Rayman is a platform game, and a very well done platform game at that. Originally, it was supposed to be on the Super Nintendo, but Ubisoft decided to move the game to a CD-based media, and hiring animators from a cartoon studio also greatly improved the graphics. The story is pretty basic. An object called the Great Protoon is stolen by a guy called Mr. Dark, causing the world to fall into chaos, and the creatures called Electoons who gravitate around the Protoon are captured.
And yes, protoon and electoon are puns on proton and neutron, the parts of an atom. See, this show is edumacational.
Batilla DeFerry tries to stop Mr. Dark but fails, so it's up to Rayman to get the Great Protoon back. And Batilla helps Rayman along the way by giving him special abilities like throwing his fists to punch, grabbing onto ledges, and using his hair as a helicopter. And like all platformers, there's collectibles, and in this one they're called tings. Collect 100 and you get an extra life. There's other power-ups that increase your hit count, make your punch hit harder, faster, and further. There's 5 worlds that are divided into several levels, and each level has 6 cages of Electoons that you have to free. And you have to free all of the Electoons to be able to reach the final boss, Mr. Dark. That's 102 Electoons. Yeah, you're going to be doing a lot of exploring. Graphically, the game looks astounding. It's extremely imaginative. The developers did an amazing job making it look like it's a dream world.
Unlike James Pond 2, that made a workshop look like a pile of junk.
The animation is really fluid, but that can be debated, as all the characters don't have arms or legs, and their hands, feet, and heads just float around their bodies. It can be looked at as a lazy shortcut. I took animation in college, and animating a character like Rayman would be looked at as taking the lazy way out. But I'm going to leave that for you guys to decide. I have no opinion on this, as Rayman comes from a magical world, but there is some concept art that has Rayman with arms and legs. The sound is pretty good, but it does get annoying to hear that wind-up sound every time you charge your fist to throw it. Gameplay-wise, it kinda has that Metroid feel to it, where you start off with nothing and slowly get more and more abilities as you adventure through the game and backtrack to get more Electoons to get to the final boss. But the controls are solid and finely tuned, making it an enjoyable experience to play. Difficulty-wise, it's kinda hard to gauge, as the first world is pretty easy. But after the first boss, who you ride to the next world in a very treacherous spy-filled ravine, the game smashes you in the face with a brick. Bandland is a pain in the ass, and I know I'm missing the helicopter upgrade because I remember going to Bandland with it before.
This is one of those games where I know that I have to be doing something wrong, because it can't be this hard on the second world, can it? Well, not the series for me. I will give Rayman a Gift from God score, because what it does perfectly. It's just kind of weird that it didn't seem like it was that popular in America. That's actually a pretty good question. But that's actually an easy question to answer. While it may not have seemed like it was a popular game in America, it was a humongous hit over in Europe, so region does have something to do with its popularity.